So friends, the story that I have to tell you this morning is a story that starts with an act of desperation. In the fall of 2013, there were exactly 2 friends under the age of about 50 who were regularly visible at 15th Street. There was me, and there was Ian Hansen, and that was it. And there were some other friends who were on the younger end of the spectrum who were kind of hanging around, and we saw them occasionally, but not very often, and they weren't terribly involved. And then there were also all these other young adults who would wander in one Sunday. They would sit there for the hour, and then they would disappear, and we never saw them again. So I went to Ian, and I said, this is just a crazy thought, and it really was a one-off. We were standing in a hallway. I said, what do you think would happen if we invited people under the age of 40 to go have lunch with us once a month, just at a restaurant in the area? And he said, well, we could do that. Why don't we try? So we thought we might have 4, 5, 6. The first time we did this, 17 people showed up. I didn't know where they all came from. I didn't know we knew that many young adults. And the only publicity that we had done was to announce this in person after 2 meetings for worship in a row, that we were going to do this on one Sunday. And then all these people appeared. To give you the fast forward version, by about a year and a half after that, we had about 20, 25 young adults who are a regular part of the community at 15th Street. Our clerk is under 40, our assistant clerk is under 40, our recording clerk is under 40. We have under 40s on almost every committee that we have. We also have a midweek worship that is anchored by friends under the age of 40, and a number of other things that are happening, and there's other energy that's kind of exploding out of this. I wish I could tell you that I did all this on purpose, that we had some great plan, but we didn't. And so a lot of what I've learned through this experience has been looking back and saying, what did we do that helped this to work? And I think there were a few key points. One, right up front, we were in a position to appeal to young adults because we had them walking in our door. We're in a location where young people happen to be, and so the visitors were already coming to us. I am an advocate of, if young adults are not appearing in your doorway, and if there's no one in your meeting with a particular passion for young adults might not be the place for you to start with outreach. So taking advantage of what you've got. The other thing that turned out to be a really big deal was that we never looked at this as people who were under 40, like there was this lump of human beings. We got to know Glenn and Lauren and Julia. We got to know the specific individuals. Ian and I at first, just us, and then later others who had come in as well. We spent a huge amount of time in making connections, in getting to know the individuals who had come in through these lunches. We would find out that somebody was interested in art, for example, and we would introduce this person interested in art to Carol and to Juliet, who were already members of the meeting. Carol is 65 years old. Juliet is 12. But we introduced them because they had a common interest, and we were able to hook them into the meeting in that way. Religious education was really important, I think. But we were sneaky about it, or rather we were opportunistic about it. So we didn't have these lunches and host say we're gonna talk about integrity today. It didn't work that way. It was mostly backdoor religious education. And even now it still is backdoor religious education. It's being in a place with a group of friends and something came up. Somebody said, so what's this thing I hear about travel in the ministry? Do you guys do that anymore? Or being in a place where somebody would say, if I had an idea that we need to do something about the death penalty, where do I take that in Quaker circles? And so making sure that that was available and open and it was happening, that was a very big deal. A third piece I think that was magic was about the fact that this was lunch and it was really easy to say yes to. Potlucks are hard. I leave home in New York City at 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't get home until 9 o'clock at night. And in the course of the average day, I'm on the subway between 3 and 6 times. I am not going to carry around a lasagna so that I can get to the evening potluck. It just doesn't happen. So we said, all right, we'll go someplace fast and cheap and nearby, and we'll have lunch once a month wherever we happen to go. We never even decided where we were going until we were physically leaving the meeting house. That was a big deal, so that people could say, hey, I feel like Thai food today. Fine, Thai food it is. And that would be the solution. Conflicting with other events. We made a decision early on. We would conflict with other events. Because if we didn't, it would never happen. So the only Sunday that was sacred was business meeting Sunday. Everything else was fair game, but we rotated. So I would get the Peace and Social Justice clerk in January would come up to me and say, you can't schedule your lunch for that day. That's Peace and Social Justice Committee Day. We need young people on our committee. And I would say, okay, so in February, we'll be on a different Sunday. February would come and religious education would come over and say, you can't schedule that on third Sundays because that's when we're meeting. Well, yeah, and we won't, again, until like 4 months from now. So making sure that we were on that kind of rotation and willing to conflict. The last piece, two more pieces that I can do quick. One is about being a permission-giving culture. When young adults came in, a lot of times they came in with ideas. Some of them had a lot of ideas. One guy had kind of an insane number of ideas. And they would get super excited about stuff. And they would say, hey, can we get together and like talk about our spiritual journeys after meeting one day? We made it a really solid practice to have our default answer be yes. And how can I help you? So that instead of saying, we've tried that and it doesn't work, instead of saying, take that to ministry and council, they meet every second Tuesday at 7 p.m., we would say, yeah, that sounds great. There's a space upstairs. Can I help you make the announcement? So that the default is to give permission and to let people be moving forward into their gifts. Final thing I want to mention is that I have noticed we have stopped growing. This population of young adults at 15th Street, we started with almost nothing. Now we've got a pretty significant number, but we're not adding to it anymore. And I've started asking the question why, and I think I know the answer. I think we now think we have this robust community of young adults. So we did it already, like it's done. There are still visitors coming in, but we're not still greeting them in the same way. It's like we have this unwritten assumption, once you've got the community going, you've done it, that's enough, and you can stop. And so I think our next step is to go back and look at the meeting and say, where's the energy now? What's the next step in including people? Maybe it will be young adults and maybe it won't be, but what are we going to do next so that we don't stop the momentum? That's it.
Wow, that's great. So thank you very much, Emily. So next we're going to hear from Angela.
Everyone should have a little sheet of paper. It's like a half a sheet of paper. About welcoming.
Was it in the packet?
It looks like most of them didn't get it.
No. And there are, okay. Do we have any extra ones? Yes.
Did you get one back?
You need one? Sure. Actually, I think I have the old folks version.
The big one.
The biggie. I wanted to share a little bit about this quote. How many of you have ever heard of Jean Vanier? Does anybody know who he is? Well, he's a man that one day invited two people to come and live with him. There were two men who had mental illness challenges, and he started this community. You may have heard of the organization. It's called the L'Arche Community. And now there are L'Arche communities all over the world. Vanier wrote this book called Community of Growth, which I consider it the Bible about community. It's one of my, it probably is my favorite book. And the things on this, the little handout I sent to you about welcome, all of those are things that are found within the book called Community and Growth. And I wanted to kind of start there and share a little bit about that, because words like welcome, inclusivity, hospitality, those are all words that have different meanings, or can have different meanings to all of us. Even the word community. If we know one thing about ourselves is that we are diverse in a sense in terms of our orientation to our faith community. I say sometimes if there's any two of us in the same room, there will be two different opinions automatically about how they would define Quakerism. And I would like to start with this understanding of what I see welcome is. So I'd like everyone to just take a minute, close your eyes if you'd like, because having a discussion about racial inclusivity is a very challenging issue for us as friends. We have a hard time in conference sometimes. To welcome is one of the signs of true maturity. It is not only to open one's door and one's home to someone. It is to give space to someone in one's heart, space for that person to be and to grow. Space where the person knows that he or she is accepted just as they are, with their wounds and their gifts. To welcome is to be open to reality as it really is, with the least possible filters. We all have filters that were created starting from the beginning in our early childhood. These protect our vulnerable hearts and our vulnerable minds. John Vanier said at one point that I have discovered I have many filters within my own self, where I select and modify the reality I want to welcome. The reality of the world, of people, of God, and of the world of God. I select what pleases me, what boosts my ego and gives me a sense of worth. I reject that which causes me inner pain or disturbance or feeling of helplessness. That which may bring me guilt, feelings, or anger. But to grow is to let go of these filters and to welcome the reality that is given, no longer through preconceived ideas, theories, prejudgments, or prejudice, or through our wounded emotions, but just as it is. Thus, we are in truth. To welcome means that we are strengthening our inner person in freedom, letting go of fear, insecurity, becoming clear about who we authentically are and our mission. It takes many painful meetings, many times when we have been wrong and have had to ask for forgiveness. Much grace from God. and much love from loving friends. Big F and little f. To become humble and open, we must live through many humiliations. To welcome is not just something that happens as people cross our threshold. It is an attitude. It is a constant openness of the heart. Finally speaks of genuine welcome as an energy of peace and love. An energy that can be felt and appreciated. Friends, one of the greatest things about being in community is that we collectively can welcome more people in so many different ways because we are so different, each and every one of us. We have different gifts, we have different challenges. That's the wonderful thing about being in community. I'm not going to finish the rest of what I was going to share earlier and come later on to the interest group if we're going to do that. But instead, I would like for you to think about what we just read. Think about our meetings and our yearly meetings. Don't rip this. And some of what we've shared this morning. I don't know if everybody can read that. But these are some of the things we talked about this morning. And I would like you to think about those same issues in terms of marketing, in terms of inclusivity. Please consider these things. We said putting our money and our resources where our greatest problem is. We talked about products that have value. When we think of inclusivity, particularly in terms of race, we're talking about that. How are these things fitting in to our practices? We talked about target markets. We talked about drawing on the rich heritage of friends. We talked about visuals and how visuals reinforce the concept behind the words. As we think about our practices and our visuals, what are they saying to friends outside? And as you consider this, what is the big problem? Who are the we when we're talking about we? Who is our target market? How do we connect with those people, and excuse the phrase? That's not something that we generally use in terms of within the context of racial conversations. What are the what, whys, and the hows in terms of our practices? One of our biggest challenges, I believe, has to do with discerning what is the essence of Quakerism from what is white American European culture. And some of you were at the conference, the White Privilege Conference, 2,500 people, a very record-breaking times with 500 friends there. This afternoon, we will be talking about what it means to decenter whiteness. That's a hard word for some folks to hear. But if we're saying that there are things within our hearts, within our monthly meetings that we're struggling to, and at least 500 friends have a concern about this, then we need to look at what does it mean to have at the essence of our calls and our ways of being a multicultural, a truly diverse center. Our ideas, that are reflected in our practices, in our marketing, in our ways of relating to one another.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe we can hold a space to just think about that for a minute. I'm gonna use it again. Thank you very much. All right, next we will hear from Liz.
I'm going to stand because I speak a little louder that way. I want to start with a quote that is on my mind that comes from Belinda Werner Bradley, who's newly employed by New York Yearly Meeting to do outreach to children in
Children, youth, and young families.
Thank you. I haven't had when a family with children walks in the meeting, there are 3 sets of needs we need to be prepared to support. The spiritual formation of the children, the spiritual journey of the parents as individual seekers to Quakerism, and the family union as they seek a spiritual community for their family to grow in and contribute to the larger life. And that's where my heart stands. I belong to a meeting that is fairly large and is in a university town, and we're very, very blessed with people who come on a regular basis to visit. And a lot of the people who come are young graduate students. But we also live in a neighborhood that is increasing numbers of young families. And we got to the point where we had no first day school, basically in 2012. And the other thing is our meeting had stopped having children come into worship. And I never understood why. I've been there 16 years now. But the majority of the time I've been there, children didn't come into worship. So the first thing that happened is we decided we really did want to include children in worship, because one of the reasons maybe we didn't have families in first day school was that the children, there wasn't a place for the children. So we asked the children, basically I decided I didn't ask permission. I actually just went ahead and did, which is in Texas where people are a little looser. They don't have some of the holding back things that we tend to have in New England and in New York. So, but I went and decided that I would bring the children in about 10 minutes before the end of meeting. We had childcare, and there was a little bit of first day school going on. But anyhow, brought the children in, and what do you know? People really loved it because the whole community was together at the end of the meeting. And somehow, after doing that for a few months, we suddenly had some families coming. And so then, oh my, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And then I heard about 2 years ago now, here at Woolman Hill and around, I heard that Wellesley Meeting was experimenting with all-age religious education, or all-age first day school. And it seemed like the right fit for us because, you know, our parents are so busy. They're not likely to come for study groups. We've tried running study groups during the week. We've tried running study groups just about every time that we could, including before and after meeting. And we just don't get parents because they're so busy. Particularly parents, but a lot of our younger people are really busy. So we decided that the way to do it was to do everybody together. And Wellesley had a model that we kind of adopted and morphed into our own thing. We start, and we've morphed it as we've gone along. We start with a breakfast, very, very simple breakfast. Cheese sticks, sometimes we have bagels, some sort of gluten-free thing, some granola, We keep a refrigerator and coffee and tea available. And that's available in the first day school room. And the parents are invited to come with the kids. And sometimes we get a large group and sometimes we get a small group. But the first period of time, the kids are eating breakfast, the parents are eating breakfast. It means parents don't have to prepare breakfast. It's great. Some of them are having second breakfasts. And the parents can exchange conversation with each other. And a lot of the education takes place there. A lot of the community building takes place there because somebody will ask a question about Quakers and a couple of our parents have a little experience. Then we go into a lesson and we use faith and play, we use godly play, we use, the thing I like to do the best is a book, but I often present the book as picture cards, but then the kids can tell the story again. And we do that by the kids taking a carpet square and putting it on a rug, very like this rug, and circling around, and the parents sitting in back of them, either on chairs or on the floor if they care to. And then we do wondering questions, the way you do in first day school. We ask the questions. And we've introduced this as we've gone along, that everybody's part of the circle. As we start the lesson, we always have a little bit of a check-in. We have silence and then a little bit of a check-in. Some sort of question like, what color are you feeling like today? And we encourage the adults to participate. We get adults who aren't parents coming in too. This is all happening before meeting for worship. So at 11 o'clock, our meeting for worship starts. The parents leave. And then the kids, we're usually done with the wondering questions at that point, and then the kids do an activity that has to do with the lesson. But it's really fun to, the parents in the meantime have gotten their piece of education, and very often the kids have more insightful answers to the questions. We ask the parents to hang back in terms of answering the wondering questions, but then the parents are going into meeting wondering about whatever the topic has been. I'm going to do an interest group. If you want to come and hear some specifics and sing some songs maybe, we'll be doing that this afternoon.
Thank you.